My name is Fielding Belk. I'm a doctor of physical therapy. I'm so sorry I cannot be there live with you all. My wife and I are expecting a baby and could be coming at any minute. Better safe than sorry. I'm going to go ahead and this is pre recorded. First of all, it is an honor to be even invited to this conference. Um, I am a big advocate, I'm sure like many of you are, for esports in the collegiate setting, especially. And I'll get into a little bit of why. But here we go. So I conducted research in my undergrad career at Arkansas State University on the effects of aerobic exercise on point and click accuracy and motor reaction time in esports athletes. Um, so my advisors, Dr. Eric Scudamore, Dr. V is what we call her. She'd get a kick out of that. I still can't pronounce her last name. But here we go. So just a little bit about me before we get any further into it. Like I said, in 2018, I enrolled at Arkansas State University. Proud Red Wolf. I joined the esports team in 2019 for its inaugural season. At the time, I was a Rocket League player. I still play a little Rocket League now, but I'm old and washed up, so I can't really keep up with the young guys anymore. So this research was conducted in 2021. In 22, I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science, and at the same time was accepted into the Doctor of Physical Therapy program at Arkansas State. And at the same time, again, I became the volunteer esports director. The director had moved on to bigger and better things, and the program was kind of left in a lull, and I didn't want to see it fall apart. So I decided to volunteer and assist. And in 2025, I got married, graduated from my DPT program, and humble brag, Arkansas State won a national championship in the NECC in Rainbow Six Siege. So that's just a little bit about me. But let's get into this research. So the idea, as a college senior on my way out into grad school, um, I love playing video games, and I was an exercise science major. So I was like, I wonder if exercise actually helps in my performance in gaming. So a few articles here that I have just mentioned some ideas like aerobic exercise has been found to decrease reaction time in auditory and visual tests. Exercising has been studied as a way to increase numerous mental functions such as mood, self-esteem, physiological well-being. And it has been found that single bouts of moderate intensity aerobic exercise can improve cognitive function and decrease the time it takes to complete a task. So, being as simple as I am and bare bones, I read these and I'm like, well, let's apply this to gaming with a cycle protocol. So the purpose of the study was to determine whether the implementation of an aerobic 15-minute moderate intensity cycling protocol decreased the reaction time in collegiate esports athletes while also comparing accuracy in point and click times. Now stick with me here, okay? The methods, not a large cohort to work with here. So this was a more convenient sample. 12 males from the university esports team volunteered to participate in this study, mainly because I was their teammate and I asked for some help, but they did come out and help out. So obviously the requirements was to gather their consent, free of diseases affecting the central nervous system, free from use of prescribed and recreational drugs, and 5 years of gaming experience. We wanted them to be familiar with the gaming scene and computer and or keyboard and mouse especially. So that was an important aspect of this study. So the procedure, the participants self-reported their age, sex, academic year, esports experience in years, their dominant hand and warm-up style, height, weight, resting heart rate, and 45 to 55% of their heart rate reserve were calculated by the researcher, also known as me, and we'll get into that heart rate reserve here in just a moment. So, everybody knows the handy dandy Monarch cycle ergometer. Uh, the control versus the bike protocol. So the control was 15 minutes of sitting in a chair with no phone use or anything like that. So they just sat in a chair before performing in these assessments that we'll get into here in a second. And the bike protocol was a 15-minute at 45 to 55% of their heart rate reserve at a fixed 50 RPM with varying resistance. So I would increase or decrease the resistance depending on where their heart rate was. So we'd keep them in that 45 to 55% of their heart rate reserve. So both of the trials, whether it was control or the protocol, were followed by 3 AimHero assessments. So let's get into the procedure itself. I'm going to move myself out of the way. 2 sessions separated by 24 to 48 hours. So they would perform a control session and they would perform a cycle protocol session. 3 familiarization trials of AimHero and the reaction time program were performed prior to the 15 minutes, whether it was sitting or the cycle protocol. And it was a counterbalanced trial, so every other participant would start with the cycle protocol, and then every other participant would start with the control. So participant number 1 would get the cycle protocol, participant number 2 would get the control, and vice versa, all the way up until 12. But every participant completed both within 24 to 48 hours. So the programs themselves, move myself out of the way here one more time. AimHero, so we chose AimHero mainly because of the ability to be offline. There are a lot of aim training programs that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. I ended up going with AimHero just because the latency issue. I don't want to dig too deep into latency and connectivity. We all deal with that in the esports realm. But AimHero is just a simple point and click assessment. And what we did, it was a 2-minute trial, and we just instructed the participants to click as many targets as they could within 2 minutes. And the program would provide statistics at the end of each trial, whether it was how many times clicked, how many targets clicked, time between each target. It really worked well for this scenario. So Program Studios in 2016, just to mention who put it out. And reaction time tests. So the reaction time test, not as specific as the AimHero, or not as, I guess, expansive as the AimHero program. That was on human benchmark. And this is what the AimHero program looked like. So our trial didn't have all the targets on the screen at once. One target would pop up, they would have to flick to it and click it. Whether or not they hit it or not, they could click more than once. So they could click, like if they go for this target on the far right and they flick to it and miss, they can click again. And then the the reaction time test from human benchmark started with a red screen, and as soon as it turned green, the participant would click and it would give them a time, and we recorded that. Each one of these was completed 3 times after the protocol or the control. So let's get into the statistical analysis. This is a mumbo jumbo about how we did our analysis. So the data was reported as a mean and standard deviation. A one-tail dependent t-test was used to evaluate differences in reaction time, accuracy, which is the number of hits divided by the number of clicks, and average time taken to hit each target between control and moderate intensity cycling trials for each participant. Cohen's D effect size was calculated by subtracting treatment scores from control scores and dividing by the pooled standard deviation. Statistical significance is considered when P is less than or equal to 0 or 0.05, and all analyses were conducted using SPSS statistics. So a lot of mumbo jumbo, but this is what we're here for. This is why we're here. When I saw these, I was a little bit disappointed because every researcher wants their hypothesis to blow it out of the water and make a lot of sense. But as you can see from the MIC, which is the moderate intensity cycling protocol, and the CON, which is control, the reaction time from the cycling protocol, and remember, reaction time, we want it to be lower, okay? We want reaction time to be lower because that's the faster it is to get to a target and click. So this is in milliseconds. It's the protocol, it seemed to increase the reaction time by 10 milliseconds, and we don't think that's a lot. But in gaming, every millisecond matters. There's a large standard deviation. We'll get into that here in a moment. And then let's see. The accuracy, which I was actually happy to see, accuracy did increase after the cycling protocol. Again, it's only about, that's less than 4 points. So it's not the greatest significance. However, any improvement is good improvement. And the point and click time between each target slightly increased, which, again, is no good if you are a researcher like myself. So the primary finding was that There was no significant change in esports reaction time or point and click accuracy after a cycling protocol. But wait, hold on. Let's discuss just a little bit about some of the outliers and how this might actually make sense just a little bit. So the mean accuracy for the moderate intensity cycling protocols was 3.6% greater compared to the control, and an effect size of 0.38 was found. Again, maybe grasping at straws, but there could be something there if we built on it and went a little bit further. The large standard deviation from the cycling protocol trials within the reaction time test suggests that there's a high inter-individual variability in response to the cycling protocol. And we'll see this here in just a second. What I thought is that, maybe it helps some and maybe it hinders some. And something that I wish we could have captured in this was maybe build a foundation of the exercise background of these participants, because if you bring somebody in that's never been to the gym or doesn't exercise a lot, and then you put them on a bike and you're like, okay, now click these targets faster, they might be under a lot of stress and they might not be able to perform like they normally would when they're sitting at home or in the esports space playing in competitive matches. So again, it could be dependent on the individual. So this is something that, this third point is something that I'm really grasping for straws here. 4 participants showed a decreased reaction time. Again, you want to decrease your reaction time because that's faster. Ranging from 6.7 milliseconds to 52.7 milliseconds following the cycling protocol. On the other end of that, 3 participants showed an increase in reaction time. That's bad. From 27.7 to 32.7 milliseconds. And there was a 4th participant who was an outlier with an increase of 110 milliseconds from the cycling trial. And the rest, the other 4, there was no real difference between their 2 trials. It's not even worth. I didn't even think it was worth putting in this just because of the small change from control to the protocol. So 4 responders, 4 non-responders, and 4 negative responders is really my grasping at straws to make this seem like it was an important research article, but that's what we got down to, and that's what it was. And at the end of the day, every gamer is different. It depends on their warm-up style, and it depends on their prior level of skill. Like, these guys were all just from a collegiate esports team that had just started. Really just a group of college esports athletes that played from home and that made a team. Like myself in 2019, I played from home and just came out to a tryout and somehow made the team. And that's how these guys were. So, if this study could be replicated at a larger scale with a larger sample with maybe some professionals, in the CSGO scene or the Valorant scene, I'd be interested to see what happens. But that is that. And the considerations of what could have changed or what wasn't enough for this study, it's possible that the 15-minute moderate intensity protocol wasn't intense enough to induce a strong response. So we could have maybe increased that from 45 to 55% of their heart rate reserve to maybe 60, 75%. That's getting pretty high, but that's just a consideration. And it's possible that the effects of aerobic exercise didn't last long enough to carry over into the examinations. So I forgot to mention this earlier, but they would perform their bike protocol, get off the bike, and immediately sit down, perform 3 of their reaction time tests, and then perform 3 of the point and click tests. So it's possible that after those first few, the effects of the aerobic exercise was slowing down. So that's a possible limitation here of this study. But hey, I appreciate you even watching this and listening. Good luck to everyone presenting. There's my information on the screen. Feel free to reach out if you are interested in chatting more. I can't wait to watch some of the recordings back and see what everyone else has done, because it's probably very interesting, and maybe some even have positive outcomes unlike mine. But, reach out. Thank you so much again. Good luck to everybody. Thank you for being an advocate for esports, and we'll see you around.